Hey, it's Russ with the Tech Training Team, and we're going to talk about installing wheels on combines. Specifically, we're going to talk about installing dual wheels on combines. And this video specifically applies to a model year 14 and newer machine with a full wheel bolt pattern on it. Now, the combines are getting heavier and the headers are getting larger, and so we're carrying more and more load on the wheels. So we need to do a good job of installing the hardware and the wheels so that they can carry the load that we're asking them to carry. So this is not really a how-to video, it's more of a best practices video. So let's get started. Drive couplers are retained with a snap ring and a bolt, and we need both of them to keep the drive couplers from moving on the axle. Now, the snap ring goes in the groove in the axle, and the coupler has a groove in it as well where the snap ring is going to sit. So we have to make sure that we get the couplers oriented properly. If we put the couplers on backwards, there's no place for the snap ring to sit. So what should happen here is that the coupler on the end of the axle should capture the snap ring. So the snap ring will be sitting in here, and we're going to slide the coupler over top of that and capture that snap ring. Then we're going to install the bolt. Now, care should be taken when you put the snap ring on the axle. And remember that we're going to transfer it from the short axle to the long axle, and we're going to only use the force necessary to open it up and slide it on from the end. We do not want to install it over the side here on the narrow diameter of the axle. Okay, so we're going to install the coupler by inserting the snap ring into the groove in the axle using only the force necessary to install it. We'll slide the coupler back over the snap ring to capture it in the groove in the end of the drive coupler. We'll install the bolt and the nut, and there are two flat washers that go with this installation, and the two flat washers under the head of the bolt and on the nut will act as grease seals. Tighten the bolt till there is no end play, but you can still rotate it slightly, and that will ensure that we hold the grease in the coupler. Okay, so the final installation on the coupler has the snap ring in the groove, the coupler is slid over top of the snap ring to capture it, the bolt is installed, and the grease zerk is oriented to the inboard side so it can be greased every 100 hours during normal maintenance. So don't forget to grease the coupler upon initial installation. Remove all rust, scale, and any lubricant from all the mating surfaces. This would include the final drive hub and the wheel itself. Anything but clean, factory painted surfaces will compress over time and the clamping force could be lost. When removing any rust or other materials from the wheel itself, be careful not to remove any more than is necessary. Remove any rust or other loose material from the final drive threaded holes using a pipe brush or barrel bore brush. Inspect each final drive threaded hole for damage before mounting the wheels. Repairs should be made before wheel installation. Okay, all the wheel bolts have a silver coating on them, and the silver coating is the corrosion protection as well as the lubrication. When we put bolts in the final drives, they go in dry, so no other lubricants or anti-seizes are used. You want to inspect your hardware, make sure that the silver coating is intact. You want to inspect the threads to make sure that they're in good shape. You want to inspect the heads of the bolts to make sure that they're nice and square, that they're not starting to get rounded off. Now, from Service Parts, they're going to have this protective sleeve on them, either this plastic one that we see on this bolt, or they're going to have some sort of a mesh coating on them here. And if you get bolts like this, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to save these protective sleeves, because we can use them when we're uninstalling the hardware on an existing installation off of a combine. So we don't want to just take the bolts and toss them into a box. We want to be pretty deliberate about handling this hardware. And if we did have a set of these plastic coverings, we could put them on and then deliberately set them into a box to protect the threads. Now, the hardware used to come in a box, the big crate that came with the dual wheels, and starting in mid-April of 2017, all the hardware is going to be installed in the final drives. So you're not going to need a box anymore, that's going to be already there. And that will ensure that the hardware is in good shape. That will ensure that the threads on the final drive hubs are going to be in good shape as well. So a change for us starting in April of 17, mid-April of 17 is going to be that the hardware will be already installed in the final drive hub. All right, so if we need to make repairs to the wheel bolts, we can do that with a CNH supplied special tool. So this is an M22 by 1.5 fine pitch die, and this is special tool number 380,000,2786. And it's available through the special tools website off the dealer portal. And you can use that to chase the threads on the bolts, okay? Now, when you do chase the threads on the bolts, you got to make sure that you don't take the silver coating off the outside. If you chase the threads too often, you'll take it off and then you're going to lose your corrosion protection and you're going to lose your lubricant. So if you take too much of the silver coating off, then you're going to want to go to a service part and just buy a new bolt and replace it. That's probably the better way to go once you have any questions about whether or not you're taking too much of the silver coating off. Now, the other thing you're going to need is a tap. And this is an M22 by 1.5 fine pitch tap. And CNH does not supply this straight tap, which would be used on all the flagship combines. So you'd have to source this locally. Again, it's an M22 by 1.5 fine pitch tap, and this would be used to chase the threads in the final drive hub on all the flagship combines. Now, what we do offer through the Special Tools Group is 380,000,2782. And this is a ramped thread tap that would be used specifically on mid-range combines since 2588s. So 2588s, 88 series, 130s, and 140s all use a ramp thread profile. So if you're repairing wheel bolts or wheel bolt holes on a final drive on a mid-range, you're going to want this ramped thread tap. Now, you don't use this on the flagship at all. You want the straight tap on the flagship, and again, that's sourced locally. Now, if you need to completely replace a wheel bolt hole on a final drive hub, we offer this kit right here. So if we strip out the final drive hub completely, we're going to offer this kit, which is 380,000,3432. And what this does is it provides a jig to mount a magnetic base drill on the final drive itself. And then we offer the ability to put certain dies in here to guide the pilot drills through, and you're actually going to drill the hole out completely, and then you're going to replace it with an insert. So you've got the jigs to hold the dies, you've got the taps to do the tapping, and to replace that with an insert. Now, the inserts are available through the NGPC, and if you look in the 240 series combine parts catalog, under section 88 accessories, you will find the inserts that will go in and repair the final drives themselves. The rims have a hole in them to accommodate a strap or other suitable lifting device. We want to sling the tires from the top with a suitable lifting device. Remember, wheels weigh from about 1,100 to 2,600 pounds, so choose the lifting straps accordingly. Now, we don't want to carry the tires on the forks and try to mount them that way because we don't have the flexibility we need to get them to line up with the holes in the final drive exactly. So always sling from the top through the hole in the rim. In the toolbox of every combine, there's going to be alignment dowels. The alignment dowels are going to make sure that the wheels are centered over the holes in the final drive hub and make the installation of the bolts much easier and make it less susceptible to damaging the threads of the bolts when we put them in the final drive hub. We should also be using the alignment dowels when we take wheels off. Now, when you take the wheels off, as you take the last few bolts out, the wheel can rotate slightly against the bolts, which would damage the threads. Using the alignment dowels to remove the wheels as well will ensure that the threads are not damaged. The instructions for installing the dual wheels is in the operator's manual. Please refer to the operator manual for specific step-by-step instructions. With the tire slung from the top and positioned close to the hub, install an alignment dowel in the final drive where it will easily line up with a small hole in the rim. Push the wheel completely onto the final drive hub and against the flange surface. Do not use bolts to draw the wheel into position. The inner dual is secured with the shorter bolts and flat washers. Inspect the hardware for thread damage and ensure the silver coating covers all surfaces. Install the bolts through a small hole in the wheel with 3 holes in between each bolt. This results in a star pattern. Start all bolts by hand and turn in at least 3 to 5 turns before using impact tools. Use a small impact tool such as a battery impact or reduce the pressure on your pneumatic wrench to fully install the bolts. Using a small impact tool will stop the rotation if a damaged thread or a piece of material is encountered. If we were using a higher torque air tool, it would cause or possibly cause damage to the final drive hub or the bolts. You could also use something like a speed wrench to put the bolts in. Using the alignment studs will make the process much easier. Torque each wheel bolt to 150 foot-pounds in the sequence shown, then to a final torque of 550 foot-pounds in the same sequence. Again, with the tire slung from the top and the alignment dowel still installed in the final drive hub, install the outer dual wheel dished out with the large holes over the 5 inner wheel bolts. Push the wheel completely onto the final drive hub and against the inner dual wheel. Do not use the bolts to draw the wheel into position. Inspect the wheel bolts for thread damage and for a complete silver coating. Inspect the spacers to ensure they are free of any defects that would prevent them from fully resting against the wheel surface. Install 2 spacer plates with 2 bolts in each to hold the wheel in place. Install the wheel bolts dry and turn them in by hand 3 to 5 turns before using impact tools. Do not over torque these wheel bolts. Use a small impact tool or reduce the pressure on your pneumatic tool so that no more than 100 foot-pounds of torque is applied to these bolts. Remove the alignment dowels. If the alignment dowels cannot be removed by hand, insert a punch or other suitable device into the hole in the end of the dowel to remove them. Install the balance of the spacers and the wheel bolts dry, taking care to inspect the parts and turning them in by hand 3 to 5 complete turns, and fully installing with a low torque tool or speed wrench. Again, do not over torque them. Tighten all bolts to 150 foot-pounds in the sequence shown. Mark all the bolt heads relative to the wheel rim and turn an additional 90 degrees in the sequence shown. Drive the combine in 10 figure-8s on a hard, level surface. This will help seat all the mating surfaces and the hardware and reduce any torque loss that might have occurred during the first use without doing this. After completing the 10 figure-8s, torque all accessible hardware to 1,000 foot-pounds in the sequence shown. After any wheel installation, bolts should be checked daily for any loss of torque until they stabilize. This means every day, about 10 hours of operation, each accessible wheel bolt should be torqued to 1,000 foot-pounds in the pattern shown until they don't change. This will ensure excellent performance and long life from the hardware and rims. Bolts may not move on the marks, but a loss of clamp load can occur. This is why we must torque them to 1,000 foot-pounds until they stabilize. Okay, so there's been a lot of key points that we've covered in this video, and these all lead to the best practices to install wheels on combines, especially dual wheels on combines. So let's do a quick review of all the key points. Install drive couplers correctly. Prepare the mating surfaces properly. Inspect and respect the hardware. Make repairs with the correct tools for each of the combines. Handle wheels appropriately. Use the alignment dowels. Start all bolts with no lube by hand 3 to 5 turns. Use low torque tools on the initial hardware installation. The short inner dual wheel hardware should be torqued to 550 foot-pounds. Use the 150 foot-pounds plus 90-degree torque turn method for the longer outer dual wheel bolt initial installation. Drive the combine in 10 figure-eights on a hard level surface to seat the wheels. Check all accessible hardware to a torque of 1,000 foot-pounds. Recheck all accessible hardware every day to 1,000 foot-pounds until the torque stabilizes. Make sure you share this video with others that are involved with installing tires. This could include customers or other local tire installers in your area. Everyone that has anything to do with installing tires or wheels on combines needs to be aware of these key points. Have a safe and productive harvest.